Welcome to the August 26, 2015 Board of Zoning Appeals. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are not familiar with the board's process, a brief explanation is in order. A detailed explanation is provided on the back of your agenda if you want to follow that. The sequence of events is as follows. Appeals will be heard first. Other businesses of the board will follow the hearing of the appeals. You are welcome to stay for the entire meeting, but not obligated to do so. All who speak or testify before the board will be sworn in. This may be done either as a group or individually. Our meetings are recorded, so we ask that everyone addressing the board, if asked to step to the speaker stand, provide your name and address when giving your testimony. Anyone speaking may be cross-examined by an attorney. All documents presented for each case will be accepted by the board. The chairman will rule whether the additional items being offered will be accepted or rejected. The persons presenting which case may also withdraw the documents. Each case will be presented by a zoning staff member. Once the BZA staff presentation is complete, the appellant will have the opportunity to present their case. Following the appellant's presentation, the chairman will ask if anyone who is opposed to appeal to the appellant and speak. Next, the board will make a motion to close the public portion of the hearing. Then the individual board members may ask anyone who has testified to return to the podium for additional questions. Following the board's question, the motion and a second will be made by either the board to either approve or deny the appeal. And finally, with respect to this process, it's respect that we respect each other, first of all. The deliberations for each case will be taken seriously by this board. Likewise, it is expectation that to be respected will be accorded to anyone regardless of any emotion that may be involved. No disruptive behaviors will be tolerated. This extends to all who have testified as well as members of the audience. Anyone being disruptive will be asked to leave the hearing room. Thank you for your patience and your attention. Roll call, please.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mr. Bartolt?
Here.
Mr. Roberto?
Here.
Mr. Reidinger?
Here.
Mr. Martin?
Here. Okay, I'll ask anyone that's going to speak before the board to stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you swear and affirm that you will tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth that matters before the Board of Zoning Appeals? Say, I do. Thank you. You may be seated. Do we have the attendance sheet or list of who signed in today? Thank you. If you're going to speak before the board, we would appreciate you signing in as well. Okay, our first case will be case number BZA 2015-7. It's a variance for an 8-foot privacy fence in a residential district. And it's followed in article in section 12.8.1. Its location is at 3431 Holly Glen Court, Cincinnati, Ohio. The applicant is James Bluss, Real Estate King, Incorporated. And do you have a presentation?
We do, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The case before you originated on July 2nd of this year when the applicant applied for and was denied a zoning certificate for 2 8-foot privacy fences in an R6 residential zoning district. As the chairman mentioned, the request did not comply with section 12.8.1 fencing within the Colerain Township zoning resolution. That section mandates that the max height of a privacy fence is 6 feet, and that privacy fence be only in the backyard to the extent that it can encroach into the side yard a maximum distance equal to 25% of the side wall length of the primary structure. Give you an idea of where we are located in the township. If I can get my pointer, there it is. This roadway here to the west of the property, this is Colerain Avenue. And this roadway here to the south of the property, this is Springdale. So the roadway in this area, this is Redskin Drive, and the subject property is on Holly Glen Court here. It is at the end of the cul-de-sac. Give you an idea of the zoning that we have. The property itself sits within an R6 zoning district, but does directly abut to the rear a R4 zoning district. And you can tell from this site, what will be a site plan here in a second, how close in proximity these homes are, particularly in the end of the cul-de-sac. The applicant is requesting that the 8-foot privacy fence run from the front corner of the accessory structure shed that is in the rear of the property all the way to the front property line beyond the side yard of the house. It is a request for 8 feet in height all the way from front to back. The second portion of the request is for another 8-foot fence to be found in kind of the northwest corner, but kept entirely in the rear yard of the property. Again, this is for an 8-foot privacy fence. This is an image shot from down the street. You can see how tightly these homes are kind of packed in here on this cul-de-sac. The subject property is in the middle there in gray, and I believe that the applicant is going to speak to you this evening about his relationship with the neighbors to the right in this image in that yellow structure just next to him in the cul-de-sac. The 8-foot fence would roughly run up to this telephone pole, kind of in that same sight line that is along the property line. A little bit of a close-up on that right side of the house of what is existing there in that chain-link fence, which I believe is solely in the rear yard. And you can kind of see this is a difficult picture, and I apologize that we don't have a better one. But this, you can kind of see on the left of the house as well, where the request for the 8-foot privacy fence in the rear, it's still pretty tight with respect to how close the properties are to one another. To give you an idea, excuse me, one second. To give you an idea of the sense of the neighborhood, there are most of the homes along Holly Glen Court do have fencing with them. Any of them that have fencing in the front yard are 4-foot chain link fences, which are allowed within the zoning resolution. Many of them also have 6-foot privacy fences that can be found in the rear yard. Some of one or two of those fences, I do believe, encroach that 25% of the sidewall, but most of them are actually anchored off of the back corner of the house rather than encroaching in that. But so that is the typical character for this particular neighborhood. That said, the staff finds that the variance requested is substantial, and while many in the neighborhood have 6-foot privacy fencing in the rear yards and also 4-foot chain link fences which protrude into the front yard, those properties do not have an 8-foot privacy fence. The property in question would likely yield a reasonable return without the variance. We feel that the owner's predicament could be feasibly obviated by other means, and we do feel that the essential character of the neighborhood would be negatively impacted if the variance were granted. Staff feels that substantial justice would be done by not granting the variance as requested. However, staff does find that substantial justice may be met through an alternative variance request. If you will allow, staff would like to recommend denial of the variance as requested, but recommending approval of a 6-foot privacy fence along the southeastern side yard up to no further than the front building line rather than the 25% of the linear footage of the side wall of the home. Staff does not recommend granting a variance for an 8-foot privacy fence on the northwestern rear portion of the yard. And just as a side note, that a 6-foot fence would be permitted by the existing zoning resolution. That said, I would be happy to answer any questions of the board at this time.
Anyone have any questions? Thank you. Is the applicant present? Can you please approach the podium, give me your name and address?
Good evening. My name's James Blust, and I reside at 11804 Augsut Road in Harrison, Ohio. I am here on behalf of the variance for the fence. My company is Real Estate King Incorporated. We've been in business for about 15 to 20 years. We go around areas and buy properties up, distressed properties that's been distressed for quite some time. This particular property in question was vacant for about 5 years. We went in there, we remodeled it totally from the ground up. I've got probably about $60,000 worth of renovations that needs to be done on the property that we did. I currently do have the property rented out to 2 tenants and a 3-year-old daughter. And I've got some safety concerns as why we want to put the privacy fence up on the other side of the property. One of the reasons, obviously, I'd like to protect our interest and our investment, keep the property up. The fence that is existing there now is all deteriorating. It's falling down. It was never maintenance properly. There's a lot of issues with the neighbors on that side. I've got documentation of 36 pages from the Colerain Township Police Department that has responded within a year of the residents, and there's various different issues there, with drug activity being one of them, fighting constantly, all kinds of stuff. You're more than welcome to see that. That's 36 pages. I've also got a copy of the Hamilton County Police Department, and there was 33 times that they responded to that location with various complaints as well within a year as well. So that's our safety concerns, why we want to put the privacy fence up, to also protect our interest and the well-being of our tenants. There's a dog issue that keeps on roaming around the streets, that keeps on going into the yard. There was an issue last year, from what I recall from some of the other residents there, that the dog bit a child, and that's in, I guess it's in court procedures as we speak. And we're not here to buy properties and get into it with the neighbors. That's the last thing that we need to do. We never really hit it off from the day one, so we tried to stay, our distance in that. And our goal is to, like I said, provide housing, good housing for people that need it, and fix these houses that are horrible, in horrible shape. As you can see pictures, when she showed the pictures, I've got pictures also of the property, of the fence that's deteriorating. Some pictures of addresses where there is houses there. There is 8-foot privacy fences on a few of those houses. I've got those identified and marked as well. Also, there's a picture of exactly what the side yard looks like, so you can tell what I'm looking at every day. Okay, so I keep my property up, and I keep it up to code, and I expect the same thing from the other neighbors. And there's trash everywhere. There's I guess mold growing on the side of the house. All kinds of safety violations there. The Board of Health has been notified as well. And that's basically what we're here for, is to protect our interest and keep the property up to par. And we think that having the privacy fence up there will kind of put that buffer zone between the issue between the neighbors and our properties. The tenants, want to move out. I mean, they've only been there two months, and they already want to, they want to move. So it's hard for me to rent the property back out knowing what I already know. So I would have to disclose all the problems, or I could be held responsible for a lawsuit down the road. And I clearly got documentation of, this isn't made up stuff. This is how many times they was at the residence for problems. And it's marked on here. The officers marked all of them on here. Various different reasons.
Would you like to submit those documents for evidence?
Yes.
All right. The record show that we're receiving, what are you submitting?
We're going to submit the Colerain Township police records and Hamilton County police records. Also, the pictures also of the property that's noted down here, what it looks like.
Let the record show that we're receiving that as in evidence. Can you just bring it to us, please? Thank you.
I also want to point out also that this is the first property that we purchased in Colerain Township. Typically, we, sit down and we discuss with the board members about how, what areas we want to target. And Colerain Township was chosen for one of the ones to be chosen for this year. So we did buy one property to see how it's going to work out. And so far, we're not really pleased, so to speak. And that's just because of the situation. And there's been numerous occasions when the police officer, there was one time a police officer came down 4 times and arrested the gentleman. He was walking in the middle of the street drunk. And I told the police officers, how many times does, I said, you got kids walking around here. You got, families that want to, raise their kids and stuff. And in this environment, you got a guy walking down the middle of the street drunk. And he goes, well, there has to be witnesses in order for us to arrest him. I've talked to several officers in Colerain Township. They're very much aware of that family. They know him by their first name basis. So it was no surprise to anybody that I talked to about the problems that we're having out of that. I even also asked Colerain Township if they needed to put a camera up on the roof or use my property as a substation. More than welcome to. I encourage that with no expense, additional cost on my end. And I think, maybe the resident would probably agree that maybe a fence would probably be better for all people, all parties involved.
Thank you. Anything
And that's all I have. And I've got the tenant that would like to maybe speak as well.
Call for him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else speaking in favor of the appeal? You want to speak in favor? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Nathan Blust. I live at 3431 Holly Gun Court. My only problem is that there's been a couple, well, not a couple, but for my roommate, there's been one occasion, and then for me, there's been an occasion, but it was I think it was last week, my cousin, or my roommate, was coming home, and the guy that comes down drunk all the time walked over in our yard and asked him if he had any spare change so he could go at the street and buy another beer. I don't need that stuff around a 3-year-old. You know what I mean? I don't want, and there's been another occasion where he's came over, knocked on my door, and I answered the door and I said, look, dude, I have a 3-year-old here. I don't want you around her. I don't want her seeing this. And then he was like, okay, and he was cool at it at first. And he walked away, and then about 10 minutes later, he came back, knocked on the door again. And I answered it, and I was like, dude, get away, we're going to have problems. And then, it's like just stuff like that. It's just crazy. I just feel like I want safety and protection, honestly, but And like he said, the pit bull has came. They have a pit bull, and it has came in the backyard a couple times when I was back there. So about scared the crap out of me, but it is what it is. So that's all. That's the only reason really why I want it. So that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you.
problem.
Anyone else is speaking in favor of the appeal? Anyone to speak in opposition to the appeal?
I'll move we close the public input.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Bartolt?
Aye.
Mr. Roberto?
Aye.
Mr. Reininger? Mr. Martin?
Okay, the public portion is closed. We would like to raise questions. Mr. Martin, would you like to start us off, please?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm very sympathetic, but I don't think the fence is going to solve your problem. I mean, you can't wall off the property. You could put a fence in the back, but a fence in the front, an 8-foot fence in the front, isn't going to solve your problem. They can still walk around that fence. And plus, it's just, not going to fit into the neighborhood. It was a distressed property, so you kind of went in there, I think, with your eyes wide open. There's some reason why it was vacant for 5 years, perhaps. And, again, it's not typical of Colerain, but, I mean, I have situations in my own neighborhood where I'd love to have an 8-foot fence, believe me. And some of my neighbors would like to have an 8-foot fence. But if we let you have an 8-foot fence for all these reasons, and I'm not saying they're not valid reasons, but they really don't go to the question of an 8-foot fence versus a 6-foot fence. Quite honestly, I'm pretty impressed with the suggestion that the staff made for an alternative request. I'd be inclined to vote in favor of the alternative request. I think that's a pretty good compromise, one that I hadn't thought about until they mentioned it, and I think that solves the problem. For example, the dog can walk around the fence, whether it's 8 foot or 6 foot. They're going to walk around the fence, so it's not going to keep the dog out of the front yard. I mean, if you feel, and the tenant apparently is your brother, is that right? Your son, okay. Well, you've got, these are relatives, so, I mean, these are relatives that are living there, and if they want to move out, that's something you got to talk about as a family, but, you do have a probably a legal obligation to do something here, whether they're in there or somebody else is in there, but this is not going to solve the problem. You can do something in the back. A 6-foot fence is perfectly acceptable in the back, as the staff has pointed out. So I would have to say I will vote against your request, but I would be inclined to vote in favor of the alternative that the staff recommended. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Mr. Price?
Would it not be more feasible to go with the 6-foot privacy fence in the back, but perhaps put a enclosed chain link fence all the way around the front of the property, so therefore it's actually closed off. The dog can't get in, maybe a gate for the car, whatever. But that way, you're going to solve the problem of the guy just walking up to your door if you've got a chain link fence going all the way around it with a padlock on that you open when you take your car out.
Can they do, that's okay.
Yeah, it's like,
Yes, sir.
I share the driveway
if you're going to speak, you need to come to the podium. Thank you.
I share the other driveway with the other tenant, or with the other guy next door to me that's on the opposite side, which, by the way, that property's been vacant since February because he can't rent it either. He started fixing the property up when we bought ours, and the tenant was there about a month, and they broke their lease and moved out too, just because of the same reason that I have, and he hasn't rented it out since. So it's not just about the dog. It's not, it's about looking at what you see next door, because nobody will make them do things. I've called the Board of Health. I've called the city township. They've been out there numerous of times, gave them citations about how the grass being high. Nobody is doing anything about it. That's why when we looked at it on our legal term, our team, we thought, well, maybe a privacy fence would kind of keep the buffer there. But it's not. I understand what you're saying about the dog going around and all that. I understand that. You can't keep, I understand that. But I thought, again, maybe cheaper to do it that way than versus all the way around and close it and everything else.
Who owns the existing chain link fence that was there on the side? Is that the one?
I don't know. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think it is the neighbors.
Okay.
They own the fence. The other side has got a brand new fence put up from the other gentleman, but I believe it's so. I got pictures in there if you can see. Yeah, I mean there's trees growing inside it, and it's just an absolute mess. And in order to fix it right, it's going to have to be cut down, taken completely out, clean that whole area up. And I don't think we're in good terms to maybe make a suggestion of maybe splitting the cost or something like that. You know, and I don't want to put myself in that situation, to be honest with you.
But I just have to agree with Mr. Martin that this isn't going to resolve your issue.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I know that it wasn't designed to solve my issue. You know, if we got issues, problems, we call the police. You know, but I mean, like I said, this is basically a buffer zone and also more of a security thing, safety thing, because the houses are so close. I can hear their conversations. I mean, it's just, you know, I can just sit there and I can hear the conversations. That's how close it is.
it's the same with my neighborhood. I'm very close to where you're at, so I'm just across from Springdale, so I'm well familiar with that, plus the chain link issue.
And then maybe say if, would you consider maybe going, say, where the front of the house is, where the gutter is, over and then back where the shed is, instead of coming out to the front of the property, just going it from where the side of the yard, and that gives them their little bit of security for when they're out on the patio and stuff. I'll have to show you a diagram of what we're talking about. I'm just trying to make a compromise as well. And I mean, we want to continue, to, dump our money into Colerain Township, but we need some support as well in order for us to continue doing that. We can't keep on dumping thousands of dollars in properties and not getting, the support that we need as well. And I'm not saying I'm somebody special. I'm just saying you want investors to come into Colerain Township because you need them. Then, we do have to, all of us have to compromise. See where the red back there where the shed is? Yeah. And then come and just straight out, with a corner right there and stop right there.
Forgive me, but would this not be a better matter that should be tabled and he reconsider what he's asking a variance for?
Well, actually, it's in the recommendations. It's in the staff recommendation to stop the fence at the front corner of the primary residence.
And you're open to making another recommendation?
I mean, even though that's more than the 25-foot,
That was the recommendation that staff was making, is that this board consider that variance. So it's a different variance than the applicant actually requested, but what staff felt was more appropriate. So that is the variance that staff has put before you.
okay.
So, yeah, I think you're saying that that's what staff is suggesting is what you're suggesting you want, right?
Well, I think she said a 6 foot, right?
6 foot, yes.
I was hoping we went with the 8 foot
I
in the front, if not the 6, the 6 foot.
mean,
we're only talking-
one person speaking, but for me, I mean, I would not go for the 8-foot fence. It's not going to, the sound is not going to be any different with an 8-foot fence versus a 6-foot fence. Maybe a little bit of difference in sight, but certainly no security issue and no sound issue. So I think you're going to have a tough time convincing 8 feet. If I were you, I'd go with what staff is recommending. I had my time. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
And Mr. Bartle, you please, or Mr.
Yeah, I'm
Price?
finished. Go ahead.
Mr. Bartle?
Yeah, I mean, same stuff that Mr. Martin has already addressed. Likewise, it's always tough to grant a variance for something like this because 2 weeks after we give it to you, the problem might go away. And now you have a fence there for 20 years that doesn't meet zoning unless you agree to, take it down as soon as the problem goes away. So that's why I find it hard to approve something like this when you have a problem that's beyond your control. That would be just another reason why I would be against an 8-foot fence. I think that's all I really have.
Mr. Reiner?
Mr. Blust, I want to be real clear. The expectation is to create a visual barrier, security, and containment.
Yes.
The visual barrier is a privacy fence that you can't see through, obviously. Now, security, or containment rather, there was some discussion as to whether the existing, fairly dilapidated chain link fence is yours or your neighbor's, and you believe it's your neighbor's.
I believe so.
So the fence that you're suggesting would not be a containment fence, it's just a visual fence, and security, if you're containment, because I think you mentioned that there was a youngster involved, and I don't know, is the back of the property fenced at all? I mean, is there any fencing other than where?
There is not. It's mostly woods. It's all woods. So we didn't feel necessary to put a fence there because it's all woods. We got the privacy there.
Containment isn't.
I just wanted it closer to where the two houses meet, just to kind of have that barrier there. I didn't want to go all the way. They don't even go in the backyard all the way back. Those two properties are the only properties that have a different diagram for the backyard. It's actually bigger than all the rest of them because I think it's just the corner. It goes back there pretty deep. But yeah, I just more or less wanted more the safety thing for the child. You know, we was going to leave this chain link fence up. I was just going to come off of it about a foot and leave a room to weed eat or whatever. You know, I have to go out of my way as well and make the tenants somewhat. You know, I mean, this isn't your typical, okay, you know, I don't like my neighbor type of thing. It's not, you know, I mean, you've got documentations of that's a lot. For a police officer to come out within 12 months, that's overwhelming.
Okay, so the defense proposal goes from the front corner of the primary residence just to the shed. Is there any fencing beyond the shed?
Yeah, it's all chain link fence, but from after the some of it's is broken and stuff due to the trees and that falling on it and not being maintained. But I'm not really concerned about that. Like I said, I didn't want to get into it. I mean, that would have been something I would have liked to address, but I'm not going to put myself or my company in that situation.
And then the fence on the other side.
There's a chain link.
But I guess it's the north side, northeast side is that you're proposing is also for visual security. The other red line.
Correct, and that would basically box the property in for the 3-year-old.
Okay, where do you park your cars right now? Can you illustrate that, Mr. Khan? Where are the cars parked?
There actually was a photo with a picture of the car.
Yeah, that car is there because the driveway the driveway's on the side of the property. We're going to put a new driveway in. It's just...
Driveway's on the left side.
Yeah, it's...
This fence on the left side of the property would be at the terminus of the driveway? Or would a car like nose into the fence? Is that...
Well, I think what we were talking about is just just letting the whole idea behind taking it back further is because there's limited parking spots there in that cul-de-sac, and there's just nowhere to park. I mean, that's one of the reasons why he's parking in the yard.
I understand where the fence on the left side stops and where the cars stop. So
On the very back of the house.
the fence on the left side's on the back of the house, the cars would be able to pull up to the fence.
Correct.
Is there a gate in that fence?
No, there's nothing there now.
In the fence you're proposing, is there a gate proposed?
Yeah.
On the left side.
Yes, there would be a gate. Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of the staff recommendation of the 6-foot privacy fence to the front corner of the primary structure? And I'm looking very quickly to see if there is a recommendation on the left side of the barn, the left side of the structure.
It was within, as long as it was 6 foot, it was within code.
Does not recommend granted 8-foot northwest corner. Okay, 6 foot is okay. All right, 6 feet. All right, thank you. No other questions?
And I've expressed the same concerns that I have, the rest of the board has. 8 foot, you're not going to solve anything by putting an 8 foot versus a 6 foot. For that matter, a 3-foot fence would solve your problem just as much as far as keeping containment. Now, if you're looking for privacy, I understand. 6 foot is, the staff has been generous to go beyond the 25% scope of the building to allow you to come all the way to the front corner. I think that's, they've gone beyond what the book would allow, and so it would be then to our discretion whether or not we're going to grant that variance.
I was originally going to ask for a 20-foot fence, but I reduced it down to the 8.
I appreciate you bringing it within the realm.
Think how much money we're saving from an 8 to a 6.
And one of the things that I was concerned about is, are you really addressing the issue by just putting this little Berlin wall up for this little piece? Why not just continue?
Well, I think it's a mentality. I think it's more of a safety thing, is that they feel more secure in their little, you know what I mean? I think it's more of a, more of a safety thing, that they feel secure. They can let the child go out there and walk around and be a little bit more secured, and that's important.
And we're referencing the front yard or the backyard?
No, the back. They would never go in the front anyway because of the situation with going on over there. He does not want for a 3-year-old to see what goes on over there. And again, I'm not here to bash anybody, but you can read the reports.
So why not continue the fence all the way down the entire length of that side, just to make sure your visibility is blocked?
That's probably a possibility that we're going to be looking into, but as of now, I just wanted to get the basic where they're mainly congregate in the back right there. They don't go really all the way in the very back, where that, and neither does the neighbors. Everything's right there. They put their garbage right there. Their trash is always dumped out, and it smells, and that's why we wanted to just focus on that spot right there.
And then how does putting a 6-foot fence, privacy fence on the left side of the property any better than putting a 4-foot, 3-foot fence?
I'm not following what you're saying, what you're asking now.
Why do we need that resident doesn't live on that side of the property, so why do you have to have a 6-foot privacy fence on that side of the property, or 8 foot was what you're requesting?
Yeah, the only thing that we were requesting was for the gate to be put up. Okay. There's already a chain link fence on the other side. We was just gonna put a fence up there for a gate.
Okay, but that would be 6 foot as well?
Yeah.
Privacy fence?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I could clarify.
Right, they've clarified they've made the recommendation from an 8 to 6.
And a 6-foot privacy fence in the rear yard would be allowed per our zoning resolution, so you would not need to make a motion on that kind of idea.
All right, I have no further questions.
I just have one concern, because there's two things that concern me. You keep saying about the safety of the child, and obviously if something were to happen to this child, I don't want anybody to come back and say, well, the board was not sympathetic to your plight. But what I think the chairman is pointing out correctly, and I want to emphasize, is you're really not doing anything with the containment. You're going to let this 3-year-old walk around in the backyard, and as I understand it, the chain link fence is in disrepair, so there's really no containment, and there's woods back there, there's no containment there. So I'm not buying the containment argument, to be quite honest.
Well, let me explain. Very simple. They do all their argument out in the front right there by the driveway. They don't go all the way in the back and do any of their arguments, all their deals or anything like that. Everything's done in the very, very front of that property where you can see it.
I understand that.
But then there was also the dog issue was raised, so I mean that's part of what we're addressing, that portion of it as well. If you're not containing the yard, you're only putting a Band-Aid on one section just to make it visibly acceptable, then you're really not addressing the issue of the safety of the child, because the child still has the potential of the dog going somewhere on that back end of the property to get in there and get your child that's in the backyard.
Well, everything else is still a 4-foot fence. I mean, it's still secured. There's a fence all around the whole perimeter. It's a 4-foot fence, chain link fence. I wanted to put the privacy fence up there to have a little bit more privacy closer to the neighbor. That's all.
I'll make a motion that we deny the variance.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call, please. Is there a discussion?
I want to make sure, by denying the variance, we're going to accept the staff recommendation. Is that correct?
That's not what's been recommended.
Okay.
I mean, that would be a separate motion, I think, right?
That would have to be part of that same motion. So that's not how it's been made.
Well, I'm reluctant to add it on without. I'd rather have him request it. Are you?
I mean, if you're going to deny the 8 foot, yeah, let's get what I can get. I mean, I didn't pay $350 for nothing.
I'll amend the motion. I will move that we reject the variance as requested and approve the variance that is recommended by staff.
And I'll still second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Bartolt?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
No.
Mr. Reininger?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
The motion's been approved.
Thank you.
Thank
Will the permit be issued, or I just get that? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to you. All right, case number 2 is BZA 2015-8, variance to construct addition to an existing structure. It's found in article in section 7.4.10 A and B. The location is at 11981 Pippin Road, Cincinnati, Ohio. The applicant is Michael Roundtree Childress and Cunningham Incorporated. The owner is Beautiful Savior Evangelical Lutheran Church. Staff, do you have a presentation?
Yes, sir, we do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This case brought before you came to zoning staff on July 15th of this year, where the applicant was denied a zoning certificate to construct 2 additions to the primary structure on the property at 11981 Pippin Road. The zoning certificate was denied because of side yard setbacks and buffer yard requirements that were not met, and the applicant had identified these, helped identify these for staff in the process. The site highlighted on the screen before you is the site in question. Get my little pointer here, sorry about that. This is Pippin Road, right in front of the property here. And what we have is the property split between 2 separate zoning districts, an R6 and an R4. This church is does have a conditional use variance that was granted in December of 2012. With that conditional use variance, there are a number of additional requirements because this is a religious institution within a residential zone. The site plan that was submitted, I know this is a little difficult to see, so I will zoom in here in just a second, but to give you an idea of what is already on this property, what just showed up in blue there is the existing structure. And the request is for the addition of a storage space that would consist of 1 story with 841 square feet of new space, and this would leave a 28.7 foot setback from the northern property line. The request was also for a classroom addition that would consist of 1 story and 2,730 square feet of new space that would leave 37.3 feet as a setback from the northern property line. Currently, the parking lot on the eastern side of this property that does exist, highlighted with that red line there, we can see that there is only a 10-foot setback from the northern property line. As I mentioned, as applying for the zoning certificate on July 15th of this year, the applicant did help identify the 50-foot buffer that, the 50-foot setback that is required per the conditional use. And what we see here is that on both sides of the building, the existing structure does fall within that 50-foot setback, and the existing pavement area on the eastern portion of the property also falls within that 50-foot setback. Additionally, since this is a religious use within a residential zone, there is a 40-foot buffer yard requirement that includes landscaping. The applicant also identified that the 2 additions on the northern portion of the property You see that there in yellow, that is that 40-foot buffer line from the property line. So both additions do fall within that 40-foot buffer, and in fact, the original building itself on the south side of the property does fall within that 40-foot buffer also. So here's a close-up. I'm not sure what you have in your packet. I don't know if you had 8.5 by 11s or if you had the larger site plans, but just for everyone to see a little more closely how much space we're talking about here between these buffer lines. So what you see between the top orange and the top red is represents 10 feet. So back to what is proposed here again in blue is the existing structure and the two yellow additions. What the applicant identified was and this is the variance that they're requesting, is on the southern boundary here within this buffer area. They have proposed 6 new evergreen trees where 66 are required because that buffer yard in linear feet is actually 655 feet. The western boundary, they are requesting a variance proposing 0 evergreen trees where 23 are required and 0 shrubs where 36 are required. And then the northern boundary proposing 0 evergreen trees where 29 are required and 0 shrubs where 47 are required. Now that may sound substantial, but I'd like you to take a look at some of the images that we took while we went out on a site visit. Staff went out just 2 weeks ago on a site visit. The bottom left corner, it's a little difficult to see, but there will be some kind of directional arrows that pop up to help you understand where we're taking some of these pictures. So hopefully you can see that red boundary of the property in your bottom left corner there. This is an image of the front of the property from Pippin Road, looking west into the property, the main entrance. A little further north on Pippin Road, looking at that northern buffer yard and setback area from Pippin Road. And again, even further north, what you see in the right of this image there is actually the single-family residential structure that sits just north of the property, and directly in front of you, all of that vegetation is within the actual neighbor's yard, but it does serve as a pretty substantial buffer to the church itself. And this is again on Pippin Road, really sitting in that driveway of that single-family residential adjacent to the north. That is looking at where, presumably the church is behind there. This is standing in the back of the church's property, again along that north property line. This is looking east. In this picture, the building on your right is the church, and what you're looking at there is where one of the 2 additions would be is being proposed. Stepping into the property from Pippin Road, this is a little bit of a closer look of that side yard, and keep in mind that the right edge of that pavement there is just 10 feet from the property line. And again, a little further back into the property, the building on the left there is what you can see of the church. There would be an addition sticking out there as well. That would be the storage space that you might see on the left there if the variances are granted. On the southern side of the property, there is some nice landscaping that is already existing, and immediately adjacent to the property on the south here in this area, it's actually utilized as a soccer field. And it appears to be utilized by the church itself, so it works in conjunction with the church property. I'm not sure of the ownership of that property. Possibly the applicant can speak to that when they come up this evening with their presentation, but it appears to work in conjunction with one another. And again, you can see the agricultural fields just to the south that kind of create their own buffer from what's surrounding. In the rear of the property, on the western portion of the property, this is actually looking about midway into the property, looking at their back parking lot, looking to the northwest into the R4 zoning district. And further back on the property, this is looking towards where part of the variance request is, particularly for that western buffer yard that is looking into R4. It's rather hilly terrain and undeveloped. Another view of the western rear yard. With that, all of that considered, staff feels that this is not a substantial request, and that the variance would not adversely affect the delivery of government services, nor would it immediately be negatively impacting on the neighborhood. Taking into consideration the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted as weighted against any potential detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood and the broader community, staff finds that substantial justice would be done by granting the variances as requested, and therefore staff would like to recommend to you the approval of the requested variances. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? All right, was the applicant here? Can you come forward and state your name and address, please?
Hello, my name is Mike Roundtree. I'm with Childress and Cunningham, the architects for the owner of the parcel. I reside at 3835 Oakcrest Avenue, Cincinnati. We have had a long history working with our client over the last several years. We have been helping to develop a master plan to allow some of their programs to grow. Back in 2005, we helped with the expansion of the parking lot with an eye towards some of the additions that you now see that are being proposed. And at the time, the zoning code did not impose the 50-foot setback on the conditional use. And so that's why the parking lot was developed out to the 10-foot, which was the imposed setback at the time. On the southern side, the driveway and parking lot is built to the 5-foot setback that was required on the alternate side yard. And so we knew that we were looking at a very tight condition, but we developed our master plan in order to anticipate these future additions. And so now that's what we're trying to do, is follow through on that master plan with the additions that are shown. One of those additions, the storage addition on the northern side, it would actually be built atop a foundation that already exists in the ground. And that was per a prior architect's work for a previous addition to the church, the multipurpose facility that's there. That foundation was put in at the time anticipating later growth and anticipating being able to use that multipurpose space for other uses. At this time, we just would be using it as a storage space. But as I said, it would be in character with the existing building. Both of these additions would be of the same materials, the same type of construction as the existing building. And everything is planned to have the least impact possible. It's just that we are situated within a very tight site and are now trying to deal with some realities of the current zoning code. Regarding the landscaping, we have shown landscaping to comply as best we can with the requirements of the zoning code. There is a clause in there that says where existing development, where portion of the site has existing development on it, that landscaping buffer should be provided to the maximum extent possible. And so in the case along the southern boundary where we have the parking lot to within 5 feet, that means that we can only provide 5 feet worth of landscaping. And so we've shown that on this plan. And along the northern boundary, we have tried to put trees and shrubs to the amount calculated as best we can within the space that we have. But obviously, we do have some tighter conditions, less than 40 feet in some places, including that storage addition, which is where the existing foundation is already in the ground. The rear portion of the site, we have omitted landscaping because, as you've seen from some of the photographs, the landscape there starts to drop the hilly terrain, and so the need for a landscaping screening seems to disappear. Plus, what we haven't documented, but you can see in photographs, is that there is a large amount of existing vegetation back in those rear corners already, and we felt that it would be kind of beside the point to remove existing landscape features just in order to plant new ones, particularly when that screening won't do much in terms of actually screening the property from other development when the other site in that west and southern corner is an undeveloped parcel. So, like I said, we have just tried to comply with the zoning code as best we can, given the constraints. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking in favor of the appeal? Please approach the podium and state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name's Ken Pitcher. My wife is here with me also, Becky. We reside at 12009 Pippin Road, and we are the property that's directly to the north of the church. And so as far as an immediate impact, we would be the neighbors who would be most impacted. So what I'm here to tell you, just a few things. We, in furtherance of their expanding their faith community and trying to do things to make their church a vibrant church, we're not opposed to that. We're not opposed to the 2 yellow addition pieces that they're showing there. The yellow piece to the left, that actually is presently a concrete pad, and they have an outdoor grill there. And so that's used as it's a fairly good size. I don't know the exact dimensions. I'd probably say 50 feet by 10 feet wide coming off. It'd be similar dimensions to what you're seeing there. And that's presently used as kind of just an area for them to accumulate some of their props, if you will, because the church, they've got a very vibrant community. They take and they put on plays and so forth. So they store some of their materials there. They also have a storage shed off to the back of the building, to the left of the existing building, as you're looking at it, favoring the top of the drawing that's on there. So those would be the trees that you see to the north side, which is to the top of the drawing on there. That's what we would be in favor of, having those trees be a part of the plan, so that we could make sure that we could take and have that buffer zone. It is, in addition to being a church, it is also a K-8 grade school. So it is operated for 9 months out of the year on a Monday through Friday basis, accommodating school. And the kids play in the back, and we love it. That's great. We have no issues with that whatsoever. We have 3 black labs who want to go over and lick those kids all the time. So we just try to keep when the kids are out on recess, we try to make sure the dogs stay in the yard and don't want to go run over there. But I think having those trees would definitely be a good thing as part of the plan as it's constructed there. What I would tell you is a couple, just to add on an additional thing. You see in the far right, upper right-hand corner, you see trees that looks about, maybe like 10 of them there, 10 to 12, that come out to Pippin Road. I would tell you that I would think that 1 is probably not necessary, but 2, probably more importantly, that's going to be a safety hazard. And the reason I say that is Our driveway, it wasn't evident from the pictures that were shown, but our driveway sits down at the bottom of a hill. So Beautiful Savior's driveway is at the top of the crest of the hill, favoring the south side, and then like my neighbor to my north is also another church. They have a driveway where it's also crests the hill. And so I can tell you firsthand, because we've been clobbered there trying to make a left-hand turn coming north into our driveway. My wife's been rear-ended once and some near misses other times. They regularly go 40, 45 miles an hour in that 35-mile-an-hour zone. So I'm not here to complain about that, but what I'm just telling you, the reality is, anytime we're going to cut down sight lines, I think that's a real negative, because I have to go and cut the neighbors, I'm not sure if it's the neighbors' trees or my trees, but to the north side, I cut those back regularly 2 to 3 times a year so that we can see. So when we're going to pull out of our driveway, whether we go left or right, those cars that are traveling southbound on Pippin Road are flying. And so we want to make sure we get ourselves ample time to get out and get with the traffic flow before it's a problem. So, and also at the end of my driveway, I guess it's been 3 years now, a little kid was crossing on a bicycle and they came over the hill and just clobbered him. I mean, fortunately, the little boy was fine. The bicycle was destroyed, but nonetheless, I'm just giving you somewhat of an idea. So I think if those trees are there, as you're seeing it in that upper right-hand corner, I really, really think that's a negative. That's got to be set back at least 20, 25 feet from the road. And then I'd be worried about, with the passage of time, I'm not sure exactly what type of trees they are, if they would be large, branched out trees that are going to take and hurt the sight lines. Again, that's going to be a real negative for everybody, including all of the parishioners at Beautiful Savior. I think them entering and exiting from the church for both school and for services, I think that would be a real negative. That could be harmful to them. So I did want to mention that. As for the other buffer zones, I don't have really a whole lot of comments because they really don't impact my property. The ones at the back, the furthest left, I can't imagine what that actually serves, what purpose that would serve, just that because it's all cornfield right now. So that's 30 acres behind me. That's behind us, Beautiful Savior, and my house. So I think that's it. Becky, did you?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else in speaking in favor? Anyone to oppose the bill?
I'll move we close the public input.
I'll second.
Motion and second has been made. Please do a roll call.
Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Bartolt?
Aye.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reininger?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
All right, the public portion has been closed. So we're up to board member questions. Mr. Martin, do you have a question?
Yeah, and I don't want my questions to be interpreted as not approving. I'm confused by this one, and maybe staff can help me. First of all, I want to applaud staff. I think the way you did the photographs, very good, and sets out the issues very well. However, the question I have is this a non-conforming use then? Because what did the variance allow in 2012? Did it allow the building to not meet the setback requirements?
I believe that the setback requirements were different, and I think Mr. Roundtree could probably speak to that more clearly than I could, given that he has more of a history with this property than.
I think he may have. I just wanted to clarify that. You said something, when the building was built, you did meet the setback requirements?
Specifically, what I was referring to was in 2005 when the parking lot was expanded and remodeled. That was developed to the setbacks, which are also shown on that drawing, but are a little harder to see. The 5 foot on one side yard and 10 foot on the other side yard.
But the building doesn't meet the setback requirements either.
In 2005, there were no changes to the building footprint. It was exclusively just the parking lot at that time.
So it didn't conform. Is that right?
There was nothing to conform to.
There was no code back in
There was no code in 2005?
Right, 2006, I believe it came in.
Is that
2006, yeah.
Okay. So I guess I think that answers my question then. So this is not an expansion of a non-conforming use, or is it?
I don't believe that it is, no.
Okay. That's question number one. So that takes care of, I think, a major concern I had. Then the other issue I had is, you talked about the 40-foot buffer and the 50-foot buffer, but if you look at 14.5.3, I think it's actually a 50-foot buffer. Does that change your mind on, because it doesn't, what 3 says is where the minimum setback for the applicable zoning district differs from the required buffer yard, the more restrictive standard will apply. So it would be 50 and not 40. So then, is it more substantial?
The 40 has to do with the landscaping, the 50
Right.
is the setback for the building itself.
Okay.
So that's why there are 2 variances.
Right, but I think, well, we can discuss that later, because I'm not sure it really impacts it, but I think that the buffer's 50-foot then, too. Isn't it?
The building would be buffered at 50, but your landscaping can go all the way up to
To
the
40.
Let me take just a second, we'll look it up.
Okay. Just take a look at 14.5.23. I think that says the buffer would have to be 50 as well. I'm asking all these questions because I'm inclined to approve this, but I want to make sure that we're approving it correctly. That's all I'm saying.
So it's a conditional use, but it's not a non-conforming use. So that's where I
Right.
think some of the confusion lies.
Correct.
So let us look, we're going to look up the conditional use and make sure we have this,
Okay.
that is correct.
And then, while you're doing that, the other concern I have, and your neighbor, I think, spoke very eloquently about it, the need for, I think we should amend probably the tree requirement, or shrub requirement on that side.
Right.
But the board also has to look into the future, and even though that's farmland now, at some point, who knows when, I mean, with the economy the way it is, but at some point that farmland may be developed. And at some point, if it is developed, it becomes residential or is changed to residential. Somebody's going to say, well, why wasn't the church required to put something on that side of the property at the time they did this?
Mm-hmm.
That's my concern, whether we should just allow absolutely no, what you're requesting is 0 shrubbery and 0 trees on the side that's abutting the agricultural use. And I think I'd be a little more comfortable if there was some landscaping buffer on that particular side.
Well, there is some existing vegetation that hasn't been thoroughly documented, and the code has specific requirements of what types of trees and what types of shrubs that has to be. So there's a question as to whether that existing vegetation meets those definitions. We felt that because there is existing vegetation that's pretty thick and serves the goal
Right.
of screening, that we could leave that in place. So,
Well, then, at a minimum, I guess I'd want a condition put in there that stay there and that you don't take it out.
or replaced with acceptable.
Right. I mean, if that's why I'm asking a question. If there exists a buffer already, then absolutely, that makes sense. But then we just need to put that as a condition in there that you will, as the chairman pointed out, either maintain it or put something new in there if it dies, basically. What else? Did you have a chance to look at that?
We did. I would imagine you don't have the code in front of you.
I do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
If you take a look at section 7.4.10.
7, okay, hold on a second. 55? Yep,
You take a look at those paragraph A and paragraph B.
right,
That'll give you an idea of why we have 2 different, we have a 50-foot setback.
right,
But then we look to paragraph B, we actually look then to page 155, which is section 14.5.2, table 14-1.
right. 156, right?
155.
We have it on 156 for some reason, but that's all right. The table's on 157, right?
Table 14-1.
Yeah,
Yes.
on 157.
57 our page.
And I see where you get the 40, because it says B2 abutting
Right, and
an
that's
R1.
the buffer yard, which is separate from the setback. The buffer yard has to do with the landscaping and essentially creating an actual buffer. It's not just a distance. So the setback is a distance.
Right,
The buffer yard is truly to create a buffer. So that's the difference. Is why there are 2 different.
but I'm just saying the required buffer, yeah, I don't want to spent a lot, but it says required buffer yard 40 feet here, but then if you go 14.5.2A3, it says where the minimum setback for the applicable zoning district differs from the required buffer yard, the more restrictive standard shall apply. And in this case, the minimum setback for the applicable zoning district is 50 feet.
If I may,
See what I'm saying?
I think the issue there may be that the required setback of the zoning district is not the 50 feet. The required setback is the 10 feet. The 50 feet is a conditional use, a condition.
No, well, the zoning, but in this zoning district, I believe it's 50 feet because it's a religious institution. I mean, we're getting in the weeds here.
Right.
Again, I'm inclined to vote in favor of this, but I want to make sure that we do it in a way that we satisfy anybody that comes by later on. Because we've been down this road before with religious institutions, and we've had some problems. And there are numerous other ones in town that'll come in and say, well, how come you did it for them but not for us? And that's why I just want to make sure that this is not a non-conforming use. We've determined that it's not. It's a conditional use, which is great. And whether it's 40 feet or 50 feet, we can debate that forever and ever and ever. But I'm more concerned about making sure whatever conditions we put in satisfy the long-term aspect of this property.
Right.
So I think, let me see if I think that's pretty much all I've got. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Price?
I have no questions.
Mr. Bartle?
Well, getting back to the west property line, 14.5.2C8 says where development already exists on both sides, a buffer shall be established. So there is no development to the west of you, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So they don't have to meet any buffer on the west side. And I would agree that that would be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, I was just curious, as far as staff goes, on your handout number 2, it says a buffer yard and landscape buffer variance on the south and west property lines, but shouldn't it be the north, south, and west?
It should. Did we miss that on the staff report?
The one I have. So that is what we're dealing with, right? These areas in the back of the property?
Yes.
On the 3 sides?
Yes. It should. I know the presentation reflects that, but let me,
So I would argue it should be the north and south, and the west should not be on there.
because of the lack of development.
Right. Other than that, I would agree with your neighbor that those trees in the front could be a side issue. I run into that over where I live, going off of Livingston onto Blue Rock, and those trees were cut down. Whether we want to address that, I don't know, or just leave it up to the applicant to deal with it as a separate issue. But other than that issue I just brought up to you, I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Reiner?
We're going to increase the footprint of the building by 2,500 square feet.
Approximately 2,700 square feet for the classroom addition in the front, plus 840, I think, at the existing foundation of the storage.
Does that in turn require us to increase the parking capacity?
As I mentioned before, we developed the parking lot back in 2005 with an eye towards this master planning. The parking counts is more governed by the assembly use as a church. It's a much lesser requirement for the educational use. And the addition is just of educational classrooms.
I just didn't know if there was a ratio between building utilization, square footage, and parking spaces availability. That was my only question.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say me too on the plantings. Consider that when someone says 0 plantings, I always get a little apprehensive. I think it should be considered down the road, and especially on that west line. The fact that it's not developed, I always take umbrage with the fact that agricultural land is developed. It just isn't planted in houses, it's planted in corn. But anyway, I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
I would agree with my fellow board members. I just to not put any landscaping buffers, I believe we should at least put forth a little effort and say, yeah, we're gonna be good to our future neighbors, even though there's not anything on there now, but our future neighbors, to make sure when they do come in that they have something attractive to look at. So just something to consider. I really don't have any other questions. We have a motion to accept or deny the.
I'll move to approve the request before us.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. We have a roll call vote, please.
Whoa.
Discussion.
Yeah, again, I'd like to vote in favor of this, but I can't vote in favor of the existing motion because I do think we need to put some more conditions on there about the buffer area. I really would like to see more than 0 on those lines, and whether that requires you. I mean, I have no problem in giving some leeway to staff here to have you come in with a subsequent plan, but I think I've heard all of us agree that we need something on that west side.
I don't agree with that.
Pardon?
I don't agree with that.
Well, I was reading 8. You're suggesting that 8 says they don't have to do anything? I don't see it on the west
He's got it
side.
on his plans, and I think it says the same thing in our resolution.
What?
Where development already exists on both sides,
Yeah,
a buffer shall be established as a condition of any new development.
correct.
But we don't have development on both sides,
But then,
do we?
so you're suggesting they don't, because there's no development on the side, they don't have to put a buffer in?
Correct.
That's, I think, wrong.
So what is it saying?
It says where development already exists on both sides of the lot line, a buffer shall be established as a condition of any new development. The property owner shall provide the maximum buffer possible under the standards of this article, given the location of existing buildings and driveways. But that doesn't obviate all the other requirements of a buffer that are previously stated in 14.1. That just says, I think, that where there's on both sides, they have to put the buffer in. And I think 14.1 clearly says that in this particular, I mean, they even, in B, it even lays out what those buffer
It
requirements are.
says the buffer shall be established as a condition of any new development. He's the new development, so he has to provide a buffer if there's development on both sides.
Again, I don't read it that way, but,
Well, and I'm not sure what staff thinks it means, but that's what I read.
so you're suggesting that the whole issue of buffer is irrelevant here?
If it's all forest or if it's all corn, why do they need a buffer?
I'd be interested in staff's opinion on that.
Well, at
Well,
this
I would
point,
too.
the
I mean-
motion has been made and seconded. If we need to amend it, then we can make that recommendation,
Okay.
and then you can vote accordingly.
I would move that we amend the motion and include a requirement for a submission of a site plan that does include some buffering, of landscape buffering specifically on the west side of the property.
Okay, motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
I'd still like to know what the official staff interpretation of that
Okay.
paragraph is.
Staff, do you have an official interpretation of that?
Just to clarify, we are talking about section 14.5.2 C8.
Correct.
The way I think that staff would interpret this is that this whole paragraph only comes into play if there is development on both sides already. So we very specifically need to have that buffer conversation is essentially what that's saying. We definitely need to pay closer attention to this when there's development on both sides of the lot line. I don't think that negates a buffer if there's no development.
So now we have to vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion.
Yes. So we got a motion and a second. You get your clarification?
Yep.
Okay. Roll call vote, please, on the
This
amendment.
To clarify the amendment, the amendment is to ask for some landscaping on the west side of the property in the R4 zoning area.
And to be clear, the west side is facing the corn, or the cornfield.
Yeah.
The rolling hills.
Yeah, that's correct. So the motion to approve would be to consider some buffering on that side, and that's for the amendment.
Right. So we need a roll call vote for the amendment, please.
Mr. Price?
No.
Mr. Bartol? Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reininger?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Okay, so now the amendment has been accepted, so now we need a roll call vote on the motion
And the motion was to approve the variance.
with the amendment of adding landscaping to the staff's recommendations.
And just to clarify, I would, again, be willing to defer to staff on this if you can go prove, come in and show staff there's existing buffering there that's acceptable to them, that accomplishes what we want to accomplish. And as a condition, you either maintain that or replace it in the future with then existing requirements. So,
Right.
Okay.
do you want to?
Well, the public portion has been closed, so unfortunately we can't address it.
You understand? I mean, I think that's what we're.
I agree. I agree with that. That would be the recommendation. That would be the. All right. Roll call vote, please, on the motion.
Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Bartol?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reininger?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Thank you. It's been approved, and with the amendments.
I think you're getting what you want. I hope you understand. We're just trying to do our job.
Okay. Case number BZA 2015-10, a variance to install an electronic reader board in addition to a previously approved pylon sign. It is found in article in section 15.8.3 H8. The location is at 8195 Colerain Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio. The applicant is Richard A. I'm going to butcher this, Paolo, Esquire, Arnoff, Rosen, and Hunt. The owners are Thornton's Incorporated. And this has been resolved, so no longer need to move forward with that. No, I read the wrong case number.
Case number C.
Yeah, I need to read case number C, so that one's been resolved. Case number BZA 2015-9, variance to add additional wall sign to the south-facing facade, article, section 15.8.3, subsection G, number 1. The location is at 9620 Colerain Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio. The applicant is Nicole Duckworth, ABC Signs Incorporated, and the owner is CP Northgate LLC. Is the applicant present? Can you please, a staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The case before you came to zoning staff on June 19th of this year, where the applicant applied for a zoning certificate for two separate wall signs on two separate elevations of the same State Farm location. The west-facing sign, which is a 3-foot by 8-foot sign facing Colerain Avenue, was granted a zoning certificate. However, the south-facing sign, which faces into the parking lot and access drive, was denied. The board will be familiar with this type of case. We are, separately, we are having a discussion about updating our zoning resolution to reflect this type of issue that we see more frequently than we like to. But the request did not comply with section 15.8.3 signs, allowing one wall-mounted sign on the particular location. You can see this parcel here is actually a quite substantial parcel. The property in question is actually hidden completely beneath my laser pointer there in this particular building, which is on the northwest corner of this major parcel across from Northgate Mall. This roadway up here is Springdale, and then, of course, coming down through the center of the image is Colerain Avenue. The zoning for the property is PD-B, and it is adjacent to B2 and B3 to the north. Again, the location of the signage itself is on this particular corner of the building in the northwestern portion of the larger parcel. To give you an idea, main entrance is actually much further south on the parcel for this particular building. It is oriented towards this shopping center. Again, that entrance is here on Colerain Avenue. This graphic was provided to us by the applicant. It gives you an idea of what is existing now. This sign on the western-facing facade does face Colerain Avenue. This sign was approved and is in place. The application before you is to approve the second sign facing in towards that parking lot and main entrance for this tenant. This is a shot. This sign here, this big pylon sign here, is actually the entrance, and right in this vicinity is where the sign is being requested, that second sign. Closer up, you can see State Farm does occupy second floor space here. And you can see the tenant beneath them, Pizza Hut, does have a sign oriented on each side of the building. The request is for a variance to allow a sign in this general vicinity. Just another image of where that would go in the top left corner here. Given this board's recent history to approve signage on multiple sides of buildings where facing an access drive or internal parking area, along with the board's request to look at a text amendment to allow for additional signage in such instances, staff recommends approval of the variance request. Property would likely yield a reasonable return with variance, and staff does feel justice would be done by approving this variance for additional signage to be installed on the south elevation. That said, staff does recommend approval of the variance as requested.
Thank you. The applicants are present. Would you please come forward and give us your name and your address, please?
My name is Nicole Duckworth. I reside at 796 Laurel Avenue in Hamilton, Ohio. Again, I am representing State Farm. This particular property, as you see, the entrance is missed by the time you see the existing sign that we have put up, which is obviously a concern to them. Also being that they are a second story, they're on that second story, it's an indicator of them being on that second floor. So that's the reason that the sign is obviously above the existing signs on that side. I know that the tenants currently probably went through the same thing because they do have signs facing that parking lot, and I can understand the zoning regulations on that. From a standpoint of somebody missing that driveway, there really is not an easy access besides turning around. By the time you've seen our sign, kind of the way the building's situated, you kind of already missed it. So I guess another concern could be somebody missing it, trying to figure out a way to get turned back around. Could be potentially, depending on how somebody did it, a safety issue. So I mean, really, it's kind of cut and dry what she said of why we want it. So I don't know really what I can add on that.
Okay. Anyone else in favor of the appeal? Anyone opposed to the appeal?
Move we close the public input.
Second.
Motion and a second has been made. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Bartol?
Aye.
Mr. Roberto?
Aye.
Mr. Reininger?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Martin, you have questions?
No, I intend to approve it. Just a quick, did Pizza Hut get a variance?
I did not look into that. I'm not
I
sure.
don't remember that coming before us because they're new.
But for all the reasons we've already discussed, I intend to approve this. Vote to approve.
Mr. Price?
I'm in that lot at least once a week having my breakfast at IHOP, and I had no idea you were even in there. So you get my vote too.
Okay, Mr. Bartle?
Just a clarification. I was just curious. You mentioned 15.8.3G. And I was just curious, when I read 15.8.2, it's also the PDB district, but it says office use in a PDB district. I'm just curious if we're using the right section.
Look it up.
The only difference, I mean, if you were to say yes to that, it just changes the amount of square footage of the sign. That's all I have. From 150 to 100, I believe.
Either way, they would be within the total square footage for both signs, I believe, is 56 square feet. The linear frontage of the building, at least of State Farm space on the building, is 58 linear feet. So they're within that range anyway, and if we're talking maximum, they're well under 100.
Okay, thanks. I know we've approved retail, and we do that because if you're on Colerain Avenue, usually you're looking for pizza or eyeglasses or something like that. This is a business, and they probably don't get too many walk-ins. I know there's tons of mid-rise buildings in the city that don't have signs on them. If you go to a doctor, a dentist, accountant, you have the address, you go to the building, you go in the main entrance, you look up the directory, and then you find what floor to go on. So if we approve this, I get the feeling that if this were a 5 or 10-story building, we would approve many, many signs on this building. And I know it's only 2 stories, but the precedent is, do we really want an office building with 10, 15 signs on it for every office that's in that particular building? So I'm kind of leaning towards not approving this because it's just not retail. It's not the kind of business, or it's not, I mean, business is not retail. They probably don't get that many walk-ins. If they're going to visit this office, they're probably going to call ahead of time, especially if they don't know where it is, if it's a new office. So I think there's reasons why it's really not necessary, and it's really not on an access road the way Stone Creek is, or the Walmart that we approved for the what was it, the healthcare facility. So the reasons for that, I don't really have any questions, but I think this is a different case from the other situations that we've approved. That's it.
Mr. Reiniger?
Yes, Ms. Tucker, can you point out on here, this paper, where you walk into this building?
I believe the entrance, let me pull that up here. I believe the entrance is on the opposite side of where the Ameren Diamonds is. So yeah, where the laser pointer would be, that's where the entrance would be. So State Farm occupies that corner. But the actual entrance is,
That's how you get upstairs?
I believe so.
Is there a sign on that door? It says State Farm upstairs?
There is not a sign on that door because I believe that also gets to the other tenants, so we can't put a window vinyl on that door that says State Farm as, creating confusion. It's not just our tenant's space.
Is there a marquee sign inside the building that says second floor State Farm?
I have not been inside the building to verify that. We have not put up a sign that says that. That's not to say that there isn't one there. I can't speak on that if there's a marquee in there or not.
So what you have is an office with an address which is like 9620 Colerain Avenue.
Correct.
And, interesting,
Which is actually kind of in the code there, the address is.
yeah.
The address is actually, I guess, kind of confusing when you pull it up because it actually brings you to that larger strip mall, which is not attached, is where it will bring you, maybe because of the entrance, or I'm not really sure. But when you pull it up, it pulls up that larger strip mall, which caused me a little bit of confusion when I was trying to figure this out to begin with. So the driveway, I guess you could find it if you were, had called ahead or whatever, but it is a little confusing on what building you're supposed to be in, because the address does seem to take you to the larger building.
The only other comment I would make, because I was initially in favor, but I'm looking at, if you look at the picture, all your signage is at the first level, and it's very clean upstairs. And I was just wondering, although you have State Farm sign on the Colerain Avenue side, there's nobody else that's got signage on the second level. I don't think. I mean, I can't see any other signage. And I'm wondering if some kind of a marquee sign downstairs would be more appropriate than up high on a building, that's all. So if you're driving around a parking lot, you're going to wind up at half-price books, in other words, or something like that.
It does seem to bring you to that, like I said, that larger strip mall, which sits catty corner kind of to this. So if there was something inside, unless they called in the parking lot, it would be difficult to find the sign for State Farm, where we currently have the sign facing Colerain Avenue, which didn't require a variance because it faces the street. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I don't have any questions. Thank you. So, do we have a motion?
I'll move we approve the variance request.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Bartle?
No.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reininger? Mr. Martin?
Yes.
The motion has been approved. All right, that brings us to case number BZA 2015-11. It's a variance to construct a new 6,900 square foot space for the relocation of Cincinnati's Bank. It is under articles in section 13.5.1 and 14.5.2. Location is 3664 and 3672 Springdale Road, Cincinnati, Ohio. Applicant is Robs Samajanis, Esquire, and Vanderkar Holdings. The owner is Cincinnati Savings and Loan. We have a request from the applicant if we could table this discussion till next month's meeting. Can we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Motion is second to table this till next month's meeting. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Bartle?
Aye.
Mr. Roberto?
Aye.
Mr. Reininger? Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Okay. Do we have any unfinished business?
I believe that we need to approve the minutes from your July 22nd meeting.
Okay.
I move that we approve the minutes from the July 22nd meeting.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Bartle?
Aye.
Mr. Roberto?
Aye.
Mr. Reininger?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Okay. The next meeting will be September 23rd. Administrative matters?
Staff just wanted to notify you that we have not forgotten about your request to update the zoning resolution with a text amendment regarding a very similar situation to the case you just had before you. Our hope is to have a draft of that text before you, if you're interested in seeing that at your next meeting, before we move forward through the entire process with the county as well as the zoning commission and then to the trustees. So
Yes, we would like to see that, please.
we will do that.
Thank you. All right, then we are adjourned.
And now that we're adjourned, we approved the July 22nd